Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. It's a little bit wet outside, but I like that because it turns things green. And besides, I'm inside, so it's not that big of a deal. Let's get started in just a second. I'm going to turn my captions off here. We're going to get rock and rolling in the official training in a second. I want to thank those of you showing up early and on time. Almost 200 of you showed up early and on time, which is awesome. I really appreciate it. And I like to start off with just a quick tip for those of you doing that. And so here's my tip for you. It's kind of related to what we're doing, but certainly related to government contracting. The tip is evaluate the words you use when you're talking with a buyer to make sure that you're using words they can relate to or they can just understand. For example, I have a customer who's getting a lot of meetings set up following what I teach you here on lives and other activity. And she was talking to some customers about additive manufacturing, right? She's thinking they would understand what that means because they do that. Anyways, long story short, she realized that it's better to sit there and say, oh, we do spare parts. We help you get spare parts. And the way they do it is with additive manufacturing. If you don't know what that is, it's basically 3D printing, right? So instead of saying jargon, 3D printing or additive manufacturing, she says, oh yeah, we help the government get spare parts when they need it. And the person she was talking to goes, oh, I know who you should talk to. You should talk to Sally. She does that. And then when you talk to Sally, Sally's like, oh, additive manufacturing? Okay, let's go to town. And so always think about what you're doing. I appreciated Tracy mentioning at Webster. She might be on here and if you are, say hi to everybody, Tracy. But she put it in a comment that I did this morning. And it just reminded me that sometimes we speak in the government's language, but sometimes we just need to take it down to third grade language and speak at a third grader level. Not that it's a dumb level. It's just very simple as terms. That's the gear. Okay, that was just a quick tip for those of you showing up early and on time. Let me get diving into the formal training. If you haven't been here before, I move at a fire hose pace. I like to give you information that leads to tactical steps that you can take after the training to go execute, right? I'm not trying to give a clickbait title here about how to make $25 million in government contracting or in subcontracting, right? I literally am trying to drive in saying, yes, you can do this. But I move at a fire hose pace since we only have a 30-minute window. So let's get rocking and rolling here. Engage in the chat. I'm going to be formalizing or doing the training, etc. But I want you to engage in the chat because this is a great time to network. If you let people know what you do, your core competency, the city or state you're in, then people make connections all the time. And so it's awesome side benefit than just learning with me. Okay, so we're diving in now. I was talking with a friend of mine who he works at a large financial institution. And yesterday we were talking about doing this training. I was doing the training and I said, hey, this is what I'm teaching about subcontracting tomorrow. And it was very convenient for me because he says, you know what, I got a customer who's doing $100 million a year just in subcontracting. They don't want to even prime contract ever. They've made a commitment to subcontracting. And I thought that was very coincidental to today's training is that when I'm teaching you about subcontracting, it's not just about this little stuff and it's just not for a little while. A company like this is their whole business model is on subcontracting. If I started another company, I would absolutely just be doing subcontracting because I love it, right? I'm not saying you have to do it. What I am saying is it's a very legitimate piece of the business. Large multi-billion-dollar firms do hundreds of millions of dollars every year subcontracting. All you have to do is go to USA Spending, pull up any large prime, and go to the tab where you can look at the money that they were awarded as a prime contractor and hit this little tab to go to subcontractor, and you can see how much money they're making as a subcontractor. Now, you can even see which contracts they're on, and you see that larges work with each other. And so go check out USA Spending if you really want to get an understanding. But larges and large smalls and regular smalls, we all subcontract. It's a normal part of business. It's a normal part of government contracting. We call it competimates, right? Sometimes we're competing, sometimes we're teammates. There are three ways you can make money in the federal market. You can subcontract under a small business, like especially that's where you start in government contracting. And then you can get prime contracts with federal agencies, and then you can subcontract under large businesses. It's much harder to get a subcontract under a large usually than it is to get an agency prime contract, a small one getting started. And so each of those three stages, though, generate revenue. And I want to talk about 2/3 of them, subbing under small and subbing under large. That's the direction we're going to go. I'm going to tell you the 15 things you need to have in place in order to make $25 million in subcontracting and how you can do that, right? And the thing I want you to keep in mind is that I'm not sharing secrets. I'm not trying to get fancy and say, oh, here's some backdoor way. I'm just telling you process. This is stuff that has been going on for decades and decades and decades in government contracting. I just want you to understand how you can put that as part of the plan for your business. So let's get rocking and rolling into making $25 million as a subcontractor. In today's training, it's a 30-minute session, so we're going to end right at 12:30. I'm going to cover down on 3 main points. The first thing is, before you start this journey of looking at $25 million in subcontracting, whether you're a brand new business or you're a $50 million small business, right? $25 million is a nice goal. And so I want you to begin, though, with being realistic about the situation and what's in front of you. The second thing is I want you to be ready. If you're going to sit there and put in place a plan to really go after subcontracting dollars, then you need to be ready. And I'll give you some tips on what you can do to be ready to increase the chances of success. And then the third thing I'll end with is this idea. So be realistic, be ready, begin with the end in mind. I want to talk about the how. So when we get to the third step in today's training, I'm going to talk about how do you begin this journey of getting $25 million as a subcontractor in government contracting's space. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner after I came out of the Army, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. A process goes from A to Z, and when you follow a process, it's repeatable, predictable results that you're going to see. And that's what I want for you. I want to teach you kind of a part of the process today on subcontracting so you can have repeatable, predictable results related to subcontracting dollars, subcontracting revenue for your company. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. It's Government Contracting Success Newsletter. It's the largest one on LinkedIn. We put a lot of great content out there. It's where I let you know about the trainings. Like we had training all this week, and we've done like 400 in the past 2 years. And in the past 2 years, we've done over 400 trainings. You see those listed. I'm doing training next week. You'll see them listed in the newsletter. That's how we put the word out. So make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. And the last thing is, I just want to say thank you to those who registered for today's training. We had over 150 people register for training. We have 300 plus people here in the live training. I really appreciate it when you register for training, because when you do, it's a simple thank you to us. You're just letting us know, hey, I'm coming, or I think I'm coming, and I love it when you come and you show up live. But the other thing is LinkedIn lets other government contractors know. And you can see we've got 300 plus people in here in today's training. It is not only training that you're experiencing, but you've got a network of people who are here. I'm assuming every single one of you are open to connecting. If you're not, say, I'm not open to connecting in the chat. Otherwise, I'm assuming you're open to connecting, right? We're here, we're networking. And so you've got this network environment. When you register, LinkedIn is helping us build our network. It's not just Neil's network, right? My network, but it's your network. You can see people and go, oh, you do cyber, I do cyber. Let's connect and see if maybe we should stay in touch. All right, so thank you for doing that. And make sure when you see the next week's training come out that you register, please. All right, so let's begin with just being realistic. I got 22 minutes to drive through a point on how to make 25 million in subcontracting dollars. And it begins with being realistic. And I put here, be realistic. It's not pessimistic, right? It's optimistic, but realism. You're looking at the reality. So the first thing I wanted to say, and maybe I should have said this earlier in the training, is that if you're a get rich quicker, if you think you're just coming in to get rich quick, this ain't for you, right? I'm a business owner. I've been a business owner multiple times. I want to help people build businesses that they can hand to their family, or they can sell off if they want to, that they can grow to a larger state. I'm here to help you build a business. I'm here to give you plans and strategies and the how of growing that business. I'm not here to help you get rich quick, right? So it just requires work here. It's the other thing I want you to understand about realism is that it's not a $1 trillion market. And for most of us, we don't need to hear this, but there's people out there who talk about government market like it's the biggest market out there, and they use trillions. I don't know why, because billions is pretty darn big too. But the $1 trillion number, just so we quickly say it, is what the entire government spends. And they spend a lot of money on Social Security. That comes from the trillions. They spend a lot of money on the several million employees that the government has, right? That is a lot of money. They spend a lot of money on interest for the debt we have as a country. All normal expenditures. What you really want to get your head around is that the government contract dollars, what we are talking about, is about 700 billion, right? Last year, 23, I think it was $745 billion. And the small business spend was about 150 billion. That part doesn't really matter, but I really want you to shrink it down and go, it's not a $1 trillion market, it's a $1 billion market. But boy, that's still pretty good. I'd be okay if it was a $100 million market. I could still succeed, right? So keep that in mind. This course or this session today is for people willing to put the work in and to build a $100 million firm. The reason I'm saying 25 million is because I see that as a necessary path to building a $100 million firm. Of course, you could subcontract completely, but when you build subcontracting, you're going to build all this past performance that will enable you to go after prime contracts that are bigger and bigger and build a $100 million firm and really go into graduating small to large prepared. Again, I'm not here to teach you magic. I'm not trying to give you a silver bullet on anything. It's just good old-fashioned work. I'm trying to sit there and demystify government contracting. It is not a secret. It's not overly hard. It is just a process that takes time to learn and then do. And I get everything is a little harder in the beginning than it will be. But if you do things over and over again, you'll start getting traction. All right, the last thing I want to tell you about being realistic is know your starting point. If you're a $100 million company, then you should be able to grow $25 million in subcontracting revenue in the next 12 months. I literally could do that for you. You give me $1 million, I will grow you 25 million if you're a $100 million company, right? But if you're smaller, let's say you're a $5 million company, you're not going to go from 5 to 30 million in 12 months. And so just understand your starting point. That's not a big deal. We all go from like crawling to walking to running, that kind of thing, right? And so here it's the same thing. When you know your starting point, you begin to set a realistic expectation of how fast can I expect to get that $25 million in subcontracting. I didn't say 25 million in a month or a year. It might take some of you 2, 3, 4 years because you're just getting started. Some of you are a little farther along. And so you want to track on that. So you're realistic, you're being realistic. Let's be ready. When you start thinking about subcontracting, especially if you double down and say, look, Neil just taught me this thing. I'm going to go try to follow his tips and go out there and knock some of this stuff out. And by the way, I have many other trainings on how to do subcontracting. I'm hitting it up today in a different way, but you can go look at our training. You can find the whole list on my LinkedIn profile. But we've done 400 trainings, more than 400 in the last 2 years. And many of my trainings have been on subcontracting. So deeper dives into the how, right? But when you're going to get out there, I want you to be ready. And so the first thing is you got to get out of this mind that if I sell a lot of things, I'll be able to reach more customers, right? I'll be able to make more money. It doesn't work like that. Even if you're a $50 million company, you still need to do what I'm suggesting, right? Because if you sell everything to everybody, nobody's going to buy nothing, is what I said. Because I thought that was funny when I was preparing it. Right? But the whole idea is you can't sell to everybody and you can't sell everything. You can try, but you're really not going to succeed. But if you have a clear, focused offer, you'll be able to make it easy for the people who want to help you to remember. For example, I know a company, ProTech, they're down in Texas. They're sitting at the top of the mind. I hope they're in the training today. But they are down outside of Fort Bragg or Fort Liberty now, and they do AWS software development. Right. But when I first started talking with them, they did IT and they did software development and data and cyber. And through the conversations, the data and cyber were really more just a support of the software development. And then they narrowed down on AWS. The reason this is so important, the reason I'm dropping their name is because they were able to have that clear, focused offer, which is a little scary for them because they're not selling everything. Because they're that way, they sit in my mind. We have over 300 people into today's training, right? Maybe almost 400 people, and I have 27,000 connections, but I can tell you the name of ProTech, AWS software development. And I'm not that good with memory, right? You want to make sure that your clear, focused offer is that slim. You can go see how I did this morning in LinkedIn. I did a post, and I showed you how I write maybe how I would write an elevator pitch, if you will, a very slow or small sentence about my clear, focused offer. how I would write it if I was targeting the government themselves. But so have that clear focused offer, really look at it and make sure it's niched down. It's easy to understand. The second thing I want you to have in place to be ready are your LCATs. These are labor categories. And basically, for the AWS software developers, that means they need to have at least 1, 2, 3 levels of software developer. They might have an AWS architect. They could have a software development project manager. So they need to know what a couple of their categories are. They don't need to know a ton, but you need to know what your labor categories are and what your rates are, because when you start talking to companies to work with them, then you're going to get into a conversation about your labor categories and your rates and where you fit in with them. In fact, if you get a meeting to be able to talk about this or go down this path of subcontracting with somebody, personally, I go look at their rates on GSA, because almost everybody I would recommend today's training that you go pursue, they're going to have a GSA schedule. And if they do, I can see their rates, right? And if I see their rates and their LCATs, I can align it to what I do. That way I'm speaking their language, still going after the work I want at the rates I want, or at least I know what their rates and my rates are and how I can get them to align. One thing I would like you to pause for a second and do, and I don't want you to put this in the chat, but I do want you to put it into your mind, if not on a piece of paper. What is your company's average billable rate? So just take whatever your rates are and bring it on down and say, what's your average rate? Today, I'm going to use $100 an hour for my examples. And so just figure out what is your average rate and write that down, because that's really important as I go through and show you how do you go after the 25 million? How do you plan that out? How do you sit there and say, well, what amount of work is that, right? So have that rate in there. The other thing, do me a quick favor. As we're going through this training, if you can put into the chat, just let me know if you're a HubZone, a woman-owned small business, 8A, or service disabled veteran-owned small business, or just a total small business, right? Let me know one of those 5 designations in particular, because I get federal buyers who come in and they're asking me about, hey, are there small businesses? I just want to point them right to the chat and say, hey, go find out for yourself. But it helps the rest of us also go, if you're a woman-owned small business, and I am, maybe we should team up. All right, the last thing I want you to have in place to be ready after having a clear, focused offer, knowing your rates, I want you to make a commitment and make the time available to grow your company, to grow that 25 million in subcontracting. It will take work. I said this, right? I don't believe it's really hard work. I think any skill, I want to actually learn how to do wheelies with my 10-year-old. I mean, I did them when I was a 10-year-old, but I can't remember them. So I want to learn how to do wheelies. And I guarantee you, I'm going to be falling off that bike. I'm going to be falling to the side. I'm going to be falling off backwards. And in the beginning, it's going to be hard. But doing a wheelie is not hard. Learning a wheelie or learning a new skill might take a little time, might be a little hard in the beginning. But once you get it and you learn that skill and you start repeating that skill over and over again, experience, right? You're going to get good at it. And so, but in the beginning, in particular, I really need you to make the commitment and time to grow. And so you have to decide what that time is. Are you going to commit 10 hours? Is it 20 hours a week? How much time are you willing to commit in order to pursue $25 million in subcontracting? Okay, so that was be realistic, be ready. Before we move on to begin and the how, one other thing I was talking about, the time commitment, making a commitment. These are the steps that I talk about. I teach the 7-step process, my 7-step process for federal revenue success. And I teach it in these 7 steps of research. So where do I want to go? Targeting is about finding the right people. So when I'm talking about making a time commitment, it takes time to do things. Building a list of 100 or 200 small businesses, large businesses that you can subcontract under, it takes time, right? So you want to be able to take the time to build that. And then you got to do outreach. That means picking up the phone, sending an email, trying to get traction. We've got customers right now who they've really worked with us. And by the way, you don't have to work with me. I put all the training out. I've got 400 trainings, so you can do this on your own. And I teach you what we do with our customers. So don't worry about working with me. But with our customers, she's doing outreach. And literally 2 times a day now, we're getting her forwarding us an email. Got another meeting, or got another customer responding back saying, let's have a meeting. Well, that's what I'm going to want you to be doing when you're trying to grow your subcontracting business. You're just not going after federal buyers. In this case, you're going after teammates, right? And so that's outreach. From that outreach, you're going to land on relationships. And in this particular case, those relationships are what we want to build. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And instead of opportunities, it really is going to be, or it is opportunities, right? But it's opportunities to subcontract in there. And so we'll talk about it. But you really want to make sure you make time for the 7-step process, because it is work, and you can't expect success without work, right? Hey, before I do move on though, because a lot of people can't work with me directly, we've got a business development masterclass. If you really want to knock it out of the park on understanding agencies, being able to get in the door, build relationships, identify opportunities, check out our business development masterclass on our website, govconchamber.com. Okay, so let's wrap up the training with how do we do this, right? And remember, this is a fast training. So I'm going to spend 10 minutes here walking through the how, and then go check out more training. And I might actually put in the newsletter a consolidated grouping of trainings we've done on subcontracting. I'm not so much telling you as my team that maybe that'd be a good idea for us to do. So beginning with the end in mind means, what are we trying to do, right? We're trying to build a book of business, of subcontracting business at $25 million. By the way, when I say 25 million in subcontracting, I don't mean 25 million once. I mean for it to keep growing, right? So I'm not here to do a one and done type thing. And so I put down annual recurring revenue. This means I want to get to 25 million, and then I want to keep that stage and keep growing it higher and higher. I want to get to $100 million. You know, I thought it was more realistic to say 25 million today instead of 100 million. But so our end in mind is $25 million in annual recurring. You can switch this around and make it monthly, which I like, because then you're seeing progress towards your goal, right? And again, keep in mind, if you're newer, much newer, even under 10 million, right? Your goals will be smaller initially for the first 12 months. And this is the part about be realistic. Set the goals going forward. But the monthly recurring revenue is if I'm pulling in $2 million a month, a little bit more than $2 million a month, then I'm going to be making $25 million a year recurring revenue, right, from these subcontracts. And when we talk right now, and I'm sorry I didn't say this earlier, I'm really primarily talking to the professional services businesses that have people doing work, right? That's really what we're talking about. And we call them full-time equivalents, but it's an employee doing work on behalf of your company for your customer, right? So it's not product sales out there, and it's not even really construction unless it's long-term construction, maintenance type construction work or something. Not that you can't use these same activities, but when I look at a professional services company, we can tend to get 5-year contracts where it's harder to get a 5-year contract in construction or products. Not impossible, just harder. Okay, so my goal, I'm beginning with the end in mind. I'm thinking in my head that I want $2 million in monthly recurring revenue. Well, what does that really mean? This is why I asked you, write down your average rate. Your numbers might change a little bit. You might go up and you might go down. So some people I know charge $150 average hourly rate. So they would need less from me. Their number would be $150 and $300,000. The way you do this math, by the way, is you just take your average hourly rate and double it, and that's your average annual revenue. It's a very simple math way of looking at what kind of revenue can you expect from the people on your team. So I want you to look at that number. Whatever that number is, double it, and you've got your annual revenue. Now, all you have to do is divide that number into 25 million to know how many people do we need. In order for you to be at $25 million, right, AAR or AIR, so $25 million in subcontracting annually, I need 125 people working for me. I will be at 125 people in my company minimum when I'm at a $25 million rate, right? Or I mean, a company. That's normal, right? Anybody who's at that size or around that size would get this kind of thing. So then this is important, right? It seems big if you're a 5-person company or a 25-person company, but everything seems big. I'm not saying you're going from a 25-person company to 125. You have to go in steady increments. I'm not here to tell you can grow at hundreds of percents every year. That's an unrealistic expectation. Unless, of course, you're at 1 person, then it's pretty realistic for the first few years, right? But put realistic expectations. If you're at a certain stage, maybe you go, you know what? I want this in 3 years. But if you're a $100 million company, for example, I could do this in 12 months with you. And so there's this balance in there, but you need to know your number. 25 million is all of our number, but what's your annual revenue per person in your company? So per FTE, and that'll give you the total number of FTEs. So if I just take this down to the last level of the work, right? Here's how you get those FTEs. It's subcontracting. So you must have known that you need prime contractors to work with. What I am saying is that you need 15 prime contractors, 15 strategic relationships with companies that are committed to working with you. If I jump really quick to the bottom, just so you put this in perspective, I do this a lot with different customers, but I'm actually putting a sensational one down here. I got a customer who towards the end of the last year picked up a subcontract with one of their relationships, one of their prime contractors, where they picked up 50 new people a year doing work, right? When I talk about you want to get to 125, these guys are going to get there a lot faster because they've been doing this for 5-10 years of really building these relationships, et cetera. And now they're picking up these contracts that are bigger subcontracting pieces. When you think about a large business, and by the way, if you're very new, don't go after the largest yet. Wait, right? Do it incrementally. But when you think about a large business and they're doing billions of dollars in contracts, they've got to use some of that money with small businesses, subcontract that out. You want to build a relationship. You don't want to tell them they're obligated. You want to tell them that you're the best to support them. When you do that, then they're going to come and put you on teams. They're going to come and put you on existing contracts. I have another customer who picked up 4 positions within like a month of the first contact with a large, and actually they got introduced through a small business professional. So don't forget about those agency liaisons, if you will. But they were able to support that large because they had an expertise and they had a location. They were in a particular location. So these things are all doable. They take time. Everything takes time. But once you start getting it in place, like these 15 prime contractors, when you have them in place and you're dedicated to those relationships, let's say you spend 1 hour a week on those relationships, trying to keep those relationships always really good, following them on LinkedIn, calling them, meeting with them on a regular basis, whatever it is, that's only 15 hours a week to maintain these 15 relationships. And any of the relationships you get, my minimum criteria for a good relationship is they have to be able to give me 4 FTEs per year, right? If they are not big enough and there's not enough room for me to fit in, then it's just not a good relationship. They're a great company. I'm a great company. It's not a good relationship, right? I didn't marry everybody I saw, and everybody I saw didn't marry me, right? There was one person that fit, right? And it's here, you can have 15 marriages, right? And so you want to sit there and find companies that hold to your criteria. They've got to be willing to pull you in. And so for the company ProTech I mentioned with AWS, we're going to help them get to the companies that need their services and as fast as possible get away from the companies that don't. But it's not going to take that long for them to begin to build up this business themselves, right? To do it without us. And I want you to do that same thing. If you have 15 prime contractors that you have built relationships, and I would recommend these contractors are somewhere between 20 million and up. I mean, you can go to larges if you're already doing, let's say, 10 plus million. But if you're doing less than that, do 20 to 200 million. That's sweet spot, what we call a valley of death for larges sometimes, or large smalls. They still need your services, and they're still open to remembering what it's like to really depend on subcontracts. And so you can get out there and build these relationships. But you can see if you do this on a repeating basis, 4 FTEs a year equals 60 FTEs. Inside of 2 years, you can be at 120, a little bit more in 2 years. If you follow this process, stay focused, go after these right primes, you're going to get traction. It's been done by many people before you. It can happen. You just have to make a commitment that you want to grow your company's revenue by $25 million in subcontracting, and you will be able to pursue it. Again, I have a lot of other training that really dives into how, breaks the numbers down more. But here's what I want you to just remember from today's training. Be realistic about your expectations. If you're realistic about it, optimistic, but realistic, you're going to hit success. Be ready before you start doing this new heavy outreach around subcontracting. So make sure you're ready with those few things I said, and then begin and never stop, right? Just keep pushing forward. There's tens and tens of thousands of businesses out there that you could possibly sub under. You just got to work through the numbers to find the ones, the 15 that want to work with you. Hey, like I said, I have 400 plus trainings out there. Every topic, every single training is about the how of doing government contracting. So check them out so that you can learn and do this stuff on your own. If you're doing, let's say, 2 million plus and you're interested in having us help you, you can check out our website, govconchamber.com. We've got that course over there. Plus, I have a workshop for more advanced companies. For all of us, just remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.